Hi, my name is Annie Weiss, and this is my presentation on the science of reading. So, the big five of the science of reading is phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary and sight words, and comprehension. My presentation is going to be about vocabulary and sight words. What is the science of reading? Great question. So glad you asked. It's not just an approach. It's not just an idea. It's not just a suggestion. It is a research-based gold standard for learning how to read. So, based on decades of research in education, psychology, cognitive science, and neuroscience, these experts have shown us that learning to read is systematic and explicit. So the five pillars from the National Reading Panel are, once again, phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and reading comprehension. So all of these pillars, they do build on each other, yet they're all still interconnected. That means that they all influence each other. If one is broken, then that means later on down the line, you're going to have difficulty completing all of these pillars. So having a solid foundation of working with and recognizing sounds is phonemic awareness. Knowing that letters correspond to a spoken sound, phonics. Reading quickly and with accuracy, fluency. Understanding the words they're reading and what they mean, vocabulary. And then finally, the ultimate goal that we want kids to get to is arriving at the purpose for reading, understanding, which is reading comprehension. So, what is vocabulary and what are sight words? So, vocabulary is the knowledge of words and what they mean. This is super critical honestly, for kindergarten, but like in first grade when we start to do like reading comprehension, it is so important to know for effective communication. There are two kinds of vocabulary, oral and print. Usually print, what we read is much more extensive and large and diverse than our oral vocabulary. Like I said, it's super important for learning to read and reading comprehension. I really liked this analogy that I found, like if a student's pillar of vocabulary is broken and it's crumbling, then they're not going to be able to find meaning in what they're reading. They're not going to be able to understand it. They're not going to be able to do it quickly and efficiently. It's just so important. And something that's super interesting and frustrating about the English language is there are 100 to 200 high frequency words, irregular words. That means words that don't make sense. You can't pronounce them, so you have to memorize what they mean. And teaching this explicitly to kindergartners is one of the best ways to build that vocabulary knowledge and sight word recognition. Limited vocabulary knowledge places many students at risk for early failure in learning how to read and later failure in comprehending texts. So it's extremely important. How should we teach it? So vocabulary is learned explicitly on purpose and incidentally, not exactly on purpose. So explicit is an intentional method of teaching specific words for instruction. There's this system, the 3-tier system by Beck and McKeown. The 3-tier system where basically tier 1 is basic words, the, and, daddy, food. Don't necessarily need to teach those. Tier 2, they occur frequently in language. They're central to comprehension, and they're understood by most mature language learners. Tier 2 is the best candidate for explicit instruction. And then tier 3 words are low frequency, so you're not going to see them as much, and they're kind of specific to domains, fields, or content areas, which definitely happens in like science. Incidental instruction occurs through everyday interactions and activities that naturally arise from conversations or interests. Some ways that incidental vocabulary is taught is through read alouds, allowing your students to talk to each other, allowing them to converse, talking to your students. A teacher talking to their students and using an adult vocabulary that's not confusing but still rich will enhance the whole classroom's vocabulary by mere proximity. Label your items in your classroom. It's simple, but it's very important. And I've also seen where teachers will also label things in English and in like Spanish or Mandarin. I literally have seen teachers do that because they have more than just Spanish speaking students. Songs, rhymes, and poetry, word plays, stuff like that. And honestly, teacher modeling, any time that you are solving a problem, or it could be as simple as like your pencil or your dry erase marker isn't working. You can just like think out loud about how you solve a problem and the whole process out loud so that your students will see how you solve it and the words that you use to solve the problem. How do I plan to teach it? So I'm taking a class this semester called Teaching Reading and Writing, and this textbook it's a humongous textbook. I don't think I have it right now, but it's been super, super explicit in the way that like you teach it, and it's been super helpful, and I really like it. It's called Teaching Reading Sourcebook, and I want to teach it explicitly and incidentally. So explicitly, I will teach tier 2 words. I just did a assignment for this class where I took a book and found some tier 2 words, and then I explicitly taught that to my audience. Making sight words an integral part of our phonics lesson. I think that's super important, and most phonics curriculums have that. Providing anchor charts for reference. I'm a huge fan of anchor charts. Not only are they just super fun to create, but having that visual and that like reference to go back to, especially for kids who might need a little bit extra reminder, that's super fun and great. Repetition. Reading books over and over, or going over words over and over. That's how you get it to stick. Something that just is great in general, but specifically for vocabulary, connecting to student interest and their prior knowledge. Excuse me. Utilize things like word of the week from a website like PBS Kids. I think that would be super fun to do. And you could like incentivize learning what that word is with like dojo points or stickers or something like that. So incidentally, I will prioritize read alouds. I'm a big fan of books. And I know that reading aloud to kids is like one of the best ways to build vocabulary and word knowledge and all the things. And I want to do at least 2 read alouds every single day, no matter what, which is so hard. As a sub, it's been really hard to do that. So not super easy. There's so much to do in a day. Read books over and over, specifically books that they love. Going back to books can feel redundant, but like that exposure is so important. Use rich language. There have been many times where I've actually like used words that might have been a little bit out of the kids' basic knowledge, but it's fun to teach new words, and I love synonyms and stuff. So take time to answer student questions. How many times a day are you asked, "What does this mean?" My 5-year-old or my 6-year-old, wow, she's 6. My 6-year-old, she asks me like a million questions a day, and sometimes you just have to be like, you know what, I don't know what that is, so let's look it up together. And it's okay to not know every single answer, but for vocabulary, you want to make sure that it's like correct. Um, Encourage independent reading time. This can be difficult, especially in like kindergarten, but encouraging that and having access to books of all different genres, different interests, and different abilities is super important. I know that like science books, books about like real things, are super, super interesting to beginning readers and boys and even kids with like ADHD. They love those kinds of books. And then, I mean, it sounds so simple, but encouraging peer to peer conversations. So often we expect kids to just sit down, sit at their desks, and be quiet. But it's okay to talk, and talking is the number one most efficient and free way to get kids building social skills. And last but not least, here are my references. Yeah, thank you.